it all goes back to your core values of the business and maybe even your own individual team core values. Might like a little double click. If you're operating within those and you're really proud of what you have, keep going. If things are not quite aligned with this, somehow like not quite aligned with those core values anymore, realign them immediately. There's something that's not quite right. It could be a person, maybe added to grew the team too fast and there's some toxicity. Might have, again, like creating some automation and it's creating more messiness than it's actually helping. And it could be a number of scenarios, but it's why did we build this company in the first place? What is our North Star? And are we still all rowing in the same direction and having fun while doing it? Lean into the human element and your team's going to be happy. Enable them through tools and investments in their person and they're going to be happy. Talk about replacing things. Suddenly there's fear and fear causes some really unhealthy team dynamics. So use AI as a tool, not as a replacement.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to this next episode of the Freedom of Work podcast. So we're going to be speaking all about bridging AI and human expertise in the future of work. So in a world where AI is definitely transforming how we are hiring, building teams, and where it maybe shines and where it falls short. So today on this episode, we are joined by Katie. She's going to be talking us through all these questions all surrounding this topic. So yeah, Katie, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the guests and the listeners of this episode. Thank you.
Thanks, Leah. Really appreciate you having me. And it's a pleasure to be speaking with you all today. I'm Katie Murphy, founder and CEO of Knex. We've built an AI agent-led marketplace that connects startups with fractional executives, kind of on-demand expertise. We launched in April of 2025, and I started on the project in January of 2025. Now, my background, been an entrepreneur for since 2016, but I was, as part of that, I was a fractional COO for about 8 years, kind of turned full-on startup founder. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I feel like you've got a good knowledge of everything there from fractional work to startup work. So yeah, I guess let's sort of delve into this topic. It's the word that everyone's using, but it's how often do we not use it? It's AI. So I know it's becoming a really big part of recruitment, trying to automate different things in the processes, and people are using it as a tool to make their life easier. But I guess where do you see maybe people using it and then it sort of falling short when it comes to building these great teams that you've just sort of spoke about?
Yeah, building teams and recruitment. It's really great at scale. Maybe screening through resumes, summarizing documents, that kind of thing. At Knex, it's been absolutely wonderful in automating the kind of like the application process, if you will. So an agent sort of guiding the user through that application process and like an initial vetting. But from there, really requires a human to that further vetting, the culture piece, the EQ, that kind of thing. AI is not quite there to be able to discern between does the knowledge, does even the language the person is using, nonverbal, right? Those body cues. It's almost there with video. I'm really interested in continuing to explore that. But really, that's where the bridge between AI and human expertise is really critical, and understanding where that fit is for the organization, especially when it comes to like executive level talent.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think starting off with what you talked about there is the sort of initial onboarding. I think that the vetting, it will always need the human touch, as you said, because these non-verbal cues are things that in AI could miss. And I think I had sort of seen something as well, if like a CV is scanned and it's an image, the text, it can't actually be read and things like that. And people Maybe, for example, a graphic designer might have created a really amazing CV that's got imagery on and that displays their personality. But if it's just sort of being scanned, as you say, or there's an AI tool that's sort of implemented into the system that looks at that, it's like might actually be missing out on half the talent. So it's like, where do you draw the line of using something that's going to make your process a lot easier if you are looking for a global talent pool, but also making sure you're not missing out on that key talent?
Absolutely. If you're using a tool where AI is actually describing the image, how could you the interpretation of that image is could be critical, like you mentioned, in those design forward roles. So and creativity and what's kind of outside the box, the those that don't maybe fit
Yeah.
might be actually the best for the role. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I saw something recently. I think it was on LinkedIn, a company posted, and someone had actually sent them, well, delivered them donuts, and inside was their CV, and it was like open for donuts type thing. And then it was like, hi, got your attention. It's like maybe because there's so much like the talent shortage is there, but obviously people are wanting to also get them jobs. So it's kind of finding a balance of that and finding these different ways. Might be a little bit of a genius way, but yeah, I think utilizing it in a way to quickly filter out the large volume of CVs. Let's say if you are hiring, if it's a hybrid role based in London, for example, and it is the CV or the postcode within that radius. I think you can use it in a way that can make it a little bit easier, or keywords or certain certifications that that person will need. Perhaps years of experience, scanning the CV. Oh, they've got 3 jobs on there. This is the amount of years they're suitable for the role. And I think, yeah, flagging, maybe then from there creating certain candidates can then be second looked on by the human eye to make sure that you're not falling short when it comes to that initial vetting process and building teams.
Yeah. AI as a tool, and where I think it works the best is when it's used as a tool and not as a complete replacement of a person or a process until it's really well understood. There's been enough testing of that. Maybe if we want to go that automation route or the replacement route, the rule of thumb is always to do it manual first. And when you have a really wonderful way of doing it manually, that's when you add automation.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think also touching on those sort of the softer skills, the non-verbal skills and things that you can see that maybe isn't presenting as much. So you could see that maybe they didn't have the 3 years of experience, but they've actually took the time to do a certification outside of that that makes them equally as qualified. And I think at
Mhm.
the moment anyway, that might be something that might be lacking at the moment. But yeah, I think it's making it useful for the efficiency side of things, but risky if you're making that your sole tool for building great teams, I
Yeah,
guess.
right. Always bring intention and a little bit of asking the right questions, right? I mean, that's a tried and true way of any process to become something that's becomes a best practice.
Yeah, I think that's sort of setting the scene for where we're going with this conversation. I think obviously startups and mid to big sort of companies are going to be building these teams, and small startups are turning to fractional leaders, like you said, instead of maybe these full-time executives. Why do you think maybe this shift is starting to happen?
It's it, I get this question so often from those I meet outside of the startup community. It's been going on for years. I started
Yeah.
fractional work in 2016 and worked with so many startups. It was just a little quiet. So especially VC backed startups, right? VCs have had their go-to fractional executives, whether they've called them that or interim COO or CMO, whatever it is. They've had those individuals for years and have been using those strategies. What I think mostly happened was the build in public mode. That was 2017, 2018, like indie hacks and some really big unicorn founders feeling comfortable sharing on social media what they were building and even like showing the warts and all. And people really loved that authenticity and transparency. And then you layer on pandemic, which is forcing people to be so virtual and remote first. And then we fell in love with remote first work, right? So it's a mix of that, but also because there's the fractional space has actually grown faster than the typical workforce has. I think 57% growth since 2020. So I think it's a mix of more talent wanting that lifestyle, seeing the fulfillment that brings working with. I mean, I've always been in a bit of an impact junkie, if you will. Like, and that's why I loved fractional work. It's why I'm a serial entrepreneur. How can I have the biggest impact across many projects? And that really attracts people. And so we're seeing a flood of talent and startups sharing and learning what's working for other companies. And so I think it's just a bit more adopted from not just VC-backed startups, but through solopreneurs as well as bootstrapped companies.
Yeah, I think, as you said, yeah, it sort of all did start from, dare we say it, the COVID moment, because people were that virtual lifestyle did make people think in a completely different way. And then people were being a lot more transparent about the work they were doing. They wanted to be part of the remote first workforce, to be able to be at home, carry on working. And then once it all opens up, to be able to be doing the same as that. And I really like the impact junkie. I think that's going to be a good word that I'm going to take away from this, because I think it does really describe that. It's definitely a word I've been hearing more, fractional, over the past few years. And it's like making immediate, effective sort of results that you can see. And especially in a startup, which is really fast paced, and you can jump in and you can maybe be part of a project that's really scaling fast. And I think that's why it also works really well with that. You can jump into a high level project and see those results really quickly. And especially between rotating into different startups, like you said, the VC to the bootstrap, you're gonna get in and you're gonna be straight into it, really. I think that's what the need is there. And impact.
And also maybe funding has changed investor fund, these huge raises. I mean, we are seeing some in the AI space, so that maybe it's changing again already. I don't know. But at least for a bit there this past year, more gone were the days where you could just easily raise 20 mil. And then you would have this funding to put together a full-time team that, like the Uber model, right? I mean, you're getting full-time teams in different geographies and, scale, blitz scale. And that's drastically changed because funding's gotten tighter, which has then forced founders to use other strategies, even though some were utilizing the fractional approach since day one. Certainly, I mostly see it with multi-time founders. So it's probably multi-factored then, right? So a mix of, if you follow the capital, it's usually answers the question mostly, but then also founders like to follow what other successful founders are doing.
Yeah. So then I guess maybe it is cost savings, but do you think apart from that, or actually startups also seeing an advantage from using this?
Yeah, it's sure the investor really is calling the shots, and if the founder is bootstrapping, they're that investor, right? So they're in charge of either way. They've got a runway and they've got to maximize it. And so if that runway is shorter, tighter, then it's going to be a forcing factor to use other cost saving strategies. But then also the impacts that it's just from sharing stories, the type of talent you can get for the challenge or the moment in time through a startup's journey is so available now. So why risk it all on a full-time hire that yes, it might be a really hungry person in their early career or something like that, and hoorah rah startup mode. But those days, like there's been such a shift in that, and what people are really looking for more fulfillment. And so instead, bringing in a fractional leader that has solved that exact challenge before helped many startups get from like 1 to 10 million, instead
Yeah.
of this is the first time I'm doing it, but I'm really passionate and I love the company. What's a higher risk scenario? So it's a bit of cost savings, but also that where is the risk mitigated, because execution is a huge reason why most startups fail.
Yeah, I think definitely it's those people who have seen different HR strategies and policies work. For example, in the HR space, they have seen the way a team's been built with certain tools, how that's failed, how it's worked. It's from everything, and I think especially from the sort of building teams from the onboard and to say the person leaving the exit interview, they've had that experience, and you're going to be able to have more and more help from that person that maybe, as you said, someone that doesn't. So yeah, I think it's really interesting way to look at it, and it makes um, people sort of think about what advice maybe they should be looking to take on from the fractional leaders. Do you think, in terms of a fractional leader, then that there's a certain leader that is best suited for this role? I guess maybe an impact junkie would be the best way. But yeah, is there any sort of leaders that are sort of perfect for this fractional roles?
That's a good question. I think the passion really it is number one, right? That charismatic, and you have to have some leadership, right? But fractional, like there's people, the gig economy, right? Through expertise, and there's so much talent, so much unbelievable talent. But obviously, you've got to be able to work with others, and if you're a fractional executive or fractional expert working with founders, you've got to be a patient person. If you've got to be able to explain yourself very well, and of course, right now it's that orchestration between AI and human expertise, right? So you've got to be able to be talented at explaining to a human, and working with teams, as well as explaining to prompts to an AI to really be to win, right? To help that founder win, and help to defeat the odds with building a startup. So change, being open to change, open
Yeah.
direct communication. These are all really authentic leaders, and wonderful at explaining what done looks like, and bringing operating systems, playbooks, models with them, as well as a network that when I see the really successful fractional leaders, they have all of those qualities. And I
Yeah.
wouldn't say it's a extrovert versus introvert kind of thing. It runs the gamut, but that high EQ is probably, I would, if I had to pick one thing, the one factor that really sets people apart.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, yeah, we said the word passion there. It's definitely something to look at. But yeah, as you said, it's that and the ability to decision make, because you found out all of these things that maybe in previous roles, and you're making sure that what you've seen backs up what you think you should do. And I guess that's the same with any role as well. But as you said, using AI in the background, making sure, and it's like gets to a point where then do we need to be initiating training for this, specifically for HR within the AI area? Because, as you say, those sort of different prompts that they need to be doing to make sure it's specific for whatever the tool is you're using. Perhaps, as you said, using AI to analyze the data, spot the trends, and automate. But then, as you're a leader, being sort of really strategic in those decisions, judging the people strategy, the employee experience, and looking at the culture as well. Because I really don't think those things can be done by AI. We can use that sort of human expertise, as we've been saying, to sort of bridge that gap, I'd say.
And there's definitely a lot of tools out there that HR teams and leaders have been using for a long time. The Colby's, the Culture Index, just honestly Myers Briggs more on the personality side. Like one of the early those. That's all data that can be used, but you're still putting someone in a category where if you are looking for something that is specific to your culture, it's like you gotta create your own system. Okay, it's a blend between Colby and Culture Index and these other psychographic or psychoanalysis kind of assessments, but it's still you still gotta again, like you gotta do it manually first. You always have to have a manual process before you bring any automation in. And I
Yes.
think people aren't realizing it. I mean, a lot of AI is automation. And so if you haven't been trained on or haven't been a part of an automation project before, that you kind of set up for failure. So there's so much upskilling that needs to be done. Startups are in a great position because they're building their teams lean and they can ensure that those things are set. But I just keep seeing articles and having conversations with folks from an enterprise level. I don't envy those in large enterprises and organizations that are really trying to implement amazing new AI tools and strategies while they're battling with upskilling their workforce and this just uncomfort of, is my job at risk and all of that. It's a gnarly time right now, like really exciting but just kind of gnarly. We're in a messy middle between the adoption, where it could really make everyone's lives easier, but people just don't have the skills yet, just don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, I think that's sort of key, really. I guess, as we literally said, startups love speed, but I think maybe the automation is sometimes happening too early.
Mhm.
And as you said there, having the manual process in place is going to help. And is the sort of, have you ever seen where a team has maybe either over automating or just perhaps started the automation process too early before they can even see what's working and what's not?
I'm doing it right now. I mean, trying to scale lean. I'm trying to eat my own dog food, right? Where the whole fractional model, trying to support the solo founder, if you will, the first unicorn. That's a whole solo founder. When the when cleaning up the mess that automation makes becomes larger than the value it provides, I think that's your indication that you got to go back. Uh, what it really comes down to me, I think, is I think I find the most help is things I'm actually already good at. It AI and automation makes me even better because I know that manual process. I know it so well. So then to be able to explain to a tool the setup of that tool, because I know that manual process from start to finish so well, that's when it flows so nicely and can connect data and systems. But where I'm not so, and it's been so enticing to use AI where I'm not good at it. Okay, get a playbook from ChatGPT of like, how do I set up cold outreach automation and all this stuff. That's not my wheelhouse in general. So once I've been able to run some experience and experiments and learn a lot, it's been really helpful with learning. Can't say that it's been a great ROI of my time or the investment in the tool itself. So it when there isn't intention brought to what is this automation, what am I trying to achieve here, what am I trying to automate this manual process to, what I'm trying to give myself more bandwidth, i'm trying to I'm trying to speak to more people, out to more people. Like, what's the goal of that automation? And then seeing, okay, am I asking the right questions? Okay, am I achieving that goal now? Or now am I just having to clean up data or constantly pivot? And the manual approach or the technology backed kind of approach worked better.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good way of thinking about it, actually, and maybe not a way that most people are thinking about it, because I think if people are researching how to do something, I think now more than ever that ChatGPT is their go-to, maybe more than a Google search. And I never thought there was going to be a new Google, I'd say. So I think because obviously the things that this AI tool has, for example, it's searching more sites, etc. But the information that it's come output, it might not be relevant to exactly what you're finding out about. And if you don't know about the topic itself, then how do you know whether to question those different points on what you're doing? So I think I really like this fact about you don't want to make sure that cleaning up the mess that the automation is providing is taking more time than if you were to do the original process it's manually itself. So I think, yeah, I really like this thought process and exactly what is the goal. Like you could have multiple goals, you might have a single goal, and is it, as you say, bandwidth? Are you literally hour to hour not got a break and you're maybe thinking, okay, maybe if I'm typing this same email template out, could I just have it in email, populate the person's name, the offer letter, for example, in this instance? And yeah, that's going to help you maybe take 1 to 2 hours out of your day and prioritize looking at the new culture strategy for the next quarter, which is something that you really do need to get into, like you said. But also, is it conversions for a marketing team? Is it product speed of a certain element of the product for the product team? Yeah, I think it's really looking at those specific goals and then taking a step back and seeing, is it worth it or is it not? And is it going to, as you said, increase ROI, or is it actually maybe going to decrease it because the things that's being produced in the automated way is maybe going to be less quality than what could have been produced? So yeah, I think it's I like this way of thinking about this topic, and I think it's definitely something to go forward with. Like overloading the manual process with automation when maybe it doesn't need to in some places as well.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're like all selling to people, right? We're still all selling to people, whether it's a B2B or B2C, B2B to C, whatever. Like we're all still selling to people. And so, whether and working with people, right? You're still going to be working with people. So I see so much messiness when trying to interject a tool that isn't human in that aspect. So bring again intention. So when it like I find if it's behind the scenes, right? And maybe not so taking that human aspect, right? That gets people to, like I mentioned on build in public thing, authenticity, like we love it. The just building public mode, that kind of thing. Like if AI was writing too much of that for that founder, would it have been as viral, right? As would it have become a movement that I'm even utilizing myself? Probably not. But can it help correct our grammar, and can it help make us a little bit better at doing that? Absolutely.
Yeah,
So just asking the right questions and checking oneself and making sure that it's being used as a tool for right now, right? Until there are enough advances that and evidence that it can replace certain roles, etc. I think is a good rule of thumb.
no, definitely. And yeah, I think it brings it back to that, the authenticity keyword. It's definitely a keyword within the whole HR industry, authenticity of storytelling, and these things can't actually be produced by an AI. It could create something out of the blue if you told them a character and something, but it's not an authentic story that's been actually felt by a human being and felt those real emotions. So I think creating those stories and being authentic and having that with the tools behind is going to be a really perfect balance, and making sure, as you said, you're not over automating too early before you've actually seen what impacts the process have in the beginning.
Right.
And then I'm not sure your sort of view on this, but do you ever see as well any sort of over automation more in different like industries within that? So would you see it in maybe more product or people or operations? Have you ever maybe identified that? Or
Oh gosh, I mean, it's so much is not relevant anymore. Like, even from like a couple of years ago. So I'm like trying to think of any kind of example wouldn't even be super, super relevant.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was just reading, I've got a little newsletter I read on like the latest in AI and stuff. A large organization replacing some HR folks because they've automated so much of their just like the internal questions and things like that. We were bringing automation to that process quite a while ago, right? You're kind of like intranets and you're for like chatbots that could like help guide you to the right place of like, can you help me like answer a question about my benefits, that kind of stuff. It used to be always be people, and now it's how-to guides and things like that, like trying to help. Trainual, for example, wonderful company and tool. So but HR, something that is supposed to, especially it's been popular, more popular called people than HR. That makes that, oh man, my spidey sense, like alarm bells kind of going off, trying to, if you're replacing something that is so EQ heavy with automation. Ouch, like yikes. I would go back, like what are your core values? What, like, why did you build that HR team in the first place, and have it be like the processes you have, the culture you have, the core values you have? If it doesn't enhance those core values, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Back up, stop now. And I think there's so much pressure for leaders to be implementing AI and find like keep up with the competition and that kind of thing, that I wonder if people are really taking that, slowing down and thinking about their core values and why they built that team the way they did in the first place.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think bringing in the topic of EQ, emotional intelligence, I think yeah, it definitely can't be replaced. I think, yeah, it can, as you said, we can recognize those patterns. It can perhaps suggest responses, maybe by the frequently asked questions. But I think things that this could work for was, say, if someone was asking, oh, I'm going to be applying for your job, but how many days holiday does an employee here
Yeah.
have?
Yeah.
These type of questions are really good because it can maybe scan the careers page or scan, as you said, the back end of the internet or the Notion document and provide a potential candidate with an answer. And I think that actually does work really well there because
Absolutely.
they know that they're getting the right response and it's helping, as you say, the team go and be working on something in the background because that they've already documented and provided that information, which I think is really important for remote teams and distributed teams having all of that access. But yeah, making sure that they're not fully being replaced, because then you do need that, maybe you do need that follow-up side of things. Oh, but what if I was applying for a fractional leader role at your company, or a part-time position, or whichever, and things are going to change there and not everything might be documented. So yeah, I really think it can help with suggested responses and analysing the documentation that already exists in this instance. But yeah, interpreting certain maybe emotions that the person's asking in the chat, or a culture question, and then things are maybe going to get a little bit trickier, definitely. And I think, as you said about the passion before, I think it brings it back to this as well, because they need to be all sort of people in the HR industry are quite probably empathetic and very understanding. But I think, yeah, maybe that's something that the AI side of things doesn't have access to. So if there's maybe a question that's maybe a little bit, yeah, fueled by sadness or something like this, and or a coaching question or something that they can't, if they were actually employed and there wasn't an HR team and they wanted to ask about a coaching thing or a certain maternity pay, or why it hasn't this project been led to this, I really want to speak to this person. Yeah, I think it's they can't be empathetic with you, so it's gonna lose the whole point of the HR team, which is to
Yeah.
be that.
Yeah. And like, how much does it help to bond with a tool? I find myself bonding with my various agents, right? And I'm like, but okay, at the end of the day, when I need to scale, how helpful, how helpful is this really? And the we need to be still building teams and building that rapport and teamwork and all that kind of stuff. And so I also see it kind of the silos that working with AI could bring. But how cool would it be to maybe have more of that team approach, maybe sharing chats and like having it be a conversation, right? Where you're all learning together, you're all kind of still. So yeah, going back to what you're already good at, then automating that, right? Bringing AI to that where it can just make you even better and faster. See where there's a lack of understanding or expertise, bring in the person that has that expertise, and they
Yeah.
can absolutely make AI implement some sort of solution or make themselves even better there. And that's where I'm even finding with my own journey where it's not, what's working and what's not working seems to be tied to that.
Yeah, I think with that impact that you just mentioned, have you ever seen sort of an example where, say, a fractional leader has made more of an impact than perhaps an AI tool or even a full-time employee maybe couldn't have matched?
Yes. Example of where I've seen fractional leaders be the most effective is standing up a role or a function for the first time, or say like filling a role, like it's between some turnover or something like that. Getting someone in that is typically, and people get this so confused, there are strategic people that love innovating. That's me. Strategy folks love to brainstorm, etc. I'm really bad at monotony, right? So I'm really bad at making sure that the wheels are turning, everything, the train is on. I'm good at putting the train back on the tracks and making the team see what done is, right? But if I'm the conductor of that train, like I am absolutely miserable. So getting in the right leader for whatever the situation entails. So if it is like setting up a position for the first time and creating some infrastructure, right? And then handing that off to someone else, because the job when they started is going to be very different than the job they maybe work themselves out of. So you get that super strategic person in first in a fractional role, right? They set it all up, all the stuff up, and actually have them do all of the recruitment with help, right? Of course, like you want to make sure culture fit and all that kind of good stuff, bring in other leaders for interviews, that kind of thing. But they can really take a lot of the grunt work and I guess remove the risk of not finding the right expertise to replace them. The person they replace is probably at a lower level, a bit more of an operator and not a creator, right? And then they could continue to coach that person long term is a strategy I've seen work time and time again. And I don't understand why more people don't adopt it. I I do have a theory why, but I know I've been talking for a second here.
No, I'm here for the theory if you have one for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people like, well, wouldn't that person want to stay on long term is always well, people working themselves out of a job, like that's so uncomfortable, but that's what we do. Like that's what fractional leaders do. That's the whole point. I really
Yeah.
like the term I recently heard of, like a portfolio professional, right? So they have a portfolio of things. They love that work. And then also like, having them, if you want them to stay on long term, it ignores everything I said why it works so well, right? Because they're the strategic thinker. They don't love the execution piece. They love the creation part of it. And so then they're naturally not going to be happy. You're going to have turnover in that position. So I see so many founders, so many small businesses, enterprises even, like, well, what if somebody would want to start fractionally, but then stay long term? I think it's that uncomfortableness, right, of that risk of, well, who's going to replace them? Are they going to be as qualified, et cetera? That unknown causes it's like people to get in the way of a strategy that works so well. So if you find the right fractional leader that is comfortable with that approach, they're going to absolutely nail it. And
Yeah.
you're going to fix whatever was broken, you're going to scale faster, you're going to achieve whatever milestones or goals you have in an unbelievable way.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's like sort of also help that they're coming maybe in from a point of view which isn't in the business. I think that also helps as well because obviously they're going to be becoming part of that business. They're going to try and understand all of the goals, the culture, the mission, the values, and everything while they're there. But sometimes the outside point of view actually helps to see the things that were actually staring at the other people in the face. And I think that is really good for the strategic side of it because it can see, oh, can you not see that you're actually leaving, say, feedback for a candidate of 5 days there? And they're like, oh, no, we didn't realize because we'd automated the process. Oh, no, you've put it to be 5 days. And like, if those things aren't getting observed from an outside point of view, also, I think it's going to really help at that first stage of finding out where the problems lie. And I think, as you said, the train theory is great because I was actually thinking of maybe like a jigsaw. It's like you take all the jigsaw pieces apart, but then once it's together, it's like, yeah, that's me. I'm done here now. Bye. Because the jugsaw's now been put back together. And I think if as you said, if you're the controller or the complete jigsaw, then you actually don't have anything to do. But obviously, as time goes on, you need to keep making sure and measuring those processes that were put in place by that fractional leader because things are going to change. As we're talking about things like AI, different tools are going to come into place, and we can't make sure that, as you said, this individual comes in and maybe does help a process and creates a better strategy for something. But once they leave, implement those changes, but also keep measuring them because that change in 6 months, a year, 5 years might not have the same impact as it did when it was first initiated.
Right. Pace of change right now is wild. So, gosh, I also feel for like putting in tools that like they're going to change and get even better in 3 months. It's wow. It's a time where you also like you need that human expertise. So find it wherever you can. Find the human expert to like fill the gaps that you have and lean into that and make sure that you're using AI as a tool.
Yeah,
For right
like,
now
not
versus
sure whether you've ever
replacement.
seen the film Nanny McPhee. And she comes in and helps the kids who are all chaotic and crazy. It's like the Nanny McPhee of the career world.
Truly. Yeah. Yeah. Well said.
Um, and then, so I was just sort of speaking about this then. How did you, I know you explained that an entrepreneur, fractional, and also a founder, but how did, say, if you got an example of how the founder or the team felt like before and after bringing in a fractional leader? Did you get any feedback from that? Or how have you, actually seen it, or how maybe measure that?
Yeah, I mean, like my best longer term things are my former clients, right? Helping them put operating systems in place, right? Somebody that maybe has never hired a operational leader. And so I'm like I mentioned before, I'm setting up that infrastructure, designing the role, and then hiring for that role. Every I always had the and a lot of fractional leaders I think have this kind of motto is like we're gonna leave it everything better than we found it. Right.
Yeah.
So the only time I've seen it not work out is when there isn't enough the founder or the business owner or whoever's making the decision to bring on a fractional leader doesn't have either the tools or the background to properly vet that person and doesn't maybe take some shortcuts. Well, this person is like, I mean, so charismatic, their expertise is so amazing, but you don't go through the same steps of culture fit and that kind of thing, and where incentives lie, and setting up like scoping the engagement properly with intention on the front end. That's where I've seen it really blow up. So that's why, like at Knex, we're trying to pre vet all talent, and also that fit, that match component is leads to better outcomes. So that's the whole reason why I founded the business in general, is to try to create better outcomes for fractional executives and for those the founders that utilize them. So I still stay in touch with a lot of my former clients today, and I know a lot of other fractional leaders do too. We've got like some testimonial capabilities, and there's just so many stories of, I mean, I've helped previously I helped startups, but also law firms, for example, as well as like family offices. It was so varied, cross industry kind of things, and it all was so rewarding, and they're doing so well today. Again, like working, that's always the fractional approach to working yourself out of that job so that you leave it better than what you found.
Yeah, exactly. Working yourself out of it is it's such a funny phrase, but it really does fit with what we're saying. And say, as you said, sort of scoping with intention, making sure you have better outcomes. Have you ever seen like an example of an outcome that has really made a big difference for the team of when you started?
Yeah, I mean, we've got so our two most recent placements. One was for Vivi. They're a GLP-1, like a weight loss companion. So an AI tool, right? So that's been really cool. So genius strategy to bring on more than one like fractional chief marketing officer. So you've got one focused on paid and one focused on organic, and then working together as a team, because like usually that expertise, you kind of specialize, right? There's like so much going on and a lot of crossover too, but to take them to really blitz scale them from like 1 million to 10 million, like absolutely genius strategy. And then Gig Easy is another client of ours that it's been they have a history of like a few years. They launched a few years ago. And so they're more of a rescue scenario, right? Like some engineers might have not had the future in mind. And so some tech debt has built up. And at some point, because early days, you always prioritize funding and customers. You're not tech debt is not your number one priority when you're building early days. You try to build with intention, but sometimes Frankenstein as a result. So bringing in a CTO to fix that tech debt, bring in actually like a playbook and processes for how to document change in code, etc., like growing up a bit as a company, but then also getting their roadmap back on track. So they're actually releasing certain big shipping features, etc., on track. And they can actually look at their waterfall or, their Trello board or something, and like actually know when things are going to hit. And suddenly what was a very frustrating situation, we're back on track and we're in build mode again, and able to hit our targets and maybe hit the next fundraise or break even or whatever that may be. So both of those like just wonderful opportunities. Mostly they fall in three categories. You're either scaling, you're rescuing something within the business, or you're pivoting. All three of those scenarios are when fractional executives make a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I really like that sentence of like building with intention. Sometimes the outcome is Frankenstein. I think that's and it can
Yeah.
happen, and things like this happen in every business, and especially startups, as we've been speaking about, because there's a lot of trial and error in the beginning to make sure that you're all trying multiple things out and you're not maybe set in stone to a process that isn't quite working as well as it should be. So I think, yeah, trialing it in a few different ways, and especially having a fractional leader that has maybe also tried out these ways in the past, is also going to help you hopefully have the best outcome there. But I think it's also gets trickier as well with the global and remote teams as well, because making people get on board with the different processes, making sure that people are aligned with those, and I think also the word that we've used is being transparent and showing the journey of, if maybe you get certain feedback, you're showing, oh, well, this is where we're going to be going with this, and giving sort of that timeline to everybody in the business, I think is also a good little additional thing there.
Absolutely.
Especially with those remote teams then. So we've been speaking about those tools that they maybe need um, better, and AI tools. But yeah, if is there anything that you think they need to thrive, would you say?
Like remote first teams, like what they
Yeah.
actually need.
Yeah.
What what I love about, and I think why people get so much fulfillment working with remote first teams is because it's a forcing function. If you want things to be smooth, if you want to scale, etc., it forces you to bring so much more intention into whatever you're doing because you're coordinating remote teams, right? So the communication's got to be there, the documentation's got to be there, got to stay on process, because if we don't, then it just leads to virtual meetings all day and trying to get the train back on the tracks. So I think realizing that, and especially if someone is trying to build a remote team or you're scaling that remote team, remember that what works, lean into what works really well, where you do have tools and documentation and like do it your some DIY enablement things for the team, right? You got to have that, or you're going to have to meet time and time again. But that's also fun times too, where you can all get together and make sure that all like you've got those processes, you've got the documentation, you're whiteboarding together, team building, hoorah rah. So realizing that awareness of
Yeah.
what's needed and when to recognize when things maybe was skipped a step, taken a shortcut, things have gotten a little messy. Let's go back to the basics and what has worked for us from the beginning, lean into what's working, I think is the absolute secret.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I like when you said about this being sort of like a a forcing function, because yeah, as you said, it's like everything has to be intentional. Like you have to be really clear with the objectives, the tasks that you're working on, as well as the goal of each task and where you want to be in a timeline for that. I think, yeah, project management tools are really is always going to work for clarity on remote teams, because you make sure that you've got that, but then also the process of if you're creating something in your team and you're working with the design team and also the product team, what is that process that we're all working by, and making sure everyone understands that in the different culture that they have. I spoke to on my last podcast, someone had mentioned when someone said, yeah, this task is really, really high priority. It's urgent. So if you drop everything for that, and actually culturally to that person, urgent is 2 weeks, 3 weeks time, but you've dropped all of your things for that. I think making sure that you define a process with remote teams, because people may have different ways of interpreting those words and processes and goals and objectives in different ways. So I think, yeah, the structure and the sort of force and intentionality is really key, and making sure, yeah, you have those the check-ins when they're needed and the meetings when they're needed, but yeah,
Right.
not all the time, because that's when I said the train is gonna it's going off track and you're steering away from the goal of what you initially went out to do.
Yeah, and that like you're living the core values of that. It all goes back to your core values of the business, and maybe even your own individual team core values. Might like a little double click. If you're operating within those and you're really proud of what you have, like keep going. If things are not quite aligned with this somehow, like not quite aligned with those core values anymore, realign them immediately.
Yeah,
There's something that's not quite right. It could be a person, maybe added to grew the team too fast, and there's some toxicity. Might have again like creating some automation, and it's creating more messiness than it's actually helping. And it could be a number of scenarios, but it's why did we build this company in the first place? What is our North Star? And are we still all rowing in the same direction and having fun while doing it?
yeah, because things are going to change, as you said, but the core values could also change too. It doesn't mean that those core values have to stay the same, because if there is something that's changing, then it needs to be addressed. I think, as you said, the core values and the tools are used as an extra really on top of what you need to do already, because you maybe know where you want to go and the process you maybe want to follow, but those tools are only going to help you. But it's just sort of an enabler. The people are the force of what we've been speaking about behind that, the engine behind the tools, and they're using the tools. And I think that's literally what we came to speak about on this conversation. I think the that bridging of the AI with the human expertise is making sure that you've still got it as the engine, but you're utilizing the tools in a way to help you. Definitely.
Absolutely. I think it all comes down to that. Lean into lean into the human element, and your team's going to be happy. Enable them through tools and investments and their person, and they're going to be happy. Talk about replacing things. Suddenly there's fear, and fear causes some really unhealthy team dynamics. So use AI as a tool, not as a replacement.
Yeah, definitely. I think as sort of a summary and a final question surrounding the theme of AI, then. So let's say AI becomes a standard, and a standard, the definition of standard could be anything at this point, I say, but like just utilizing it a way that's making your day easier, but also while you're using your human expertise. Do you think there's any like skills or sort of a mindset shift that founders need to use or sort of lead to be effective in this new era, or maybe one that you've experienced yourself, which is sort of helping you push towards and bridge that gap?
The EQ is even more important than ever, but there's also like, how do you do we maybe one day we'll have a definition for a founder that knows when the AI is kind of not right, because that's not real. It's something else like AIQ. The knowing when you're an orchestrator. That's the founder role. You're orchestrating agents and humans, but it still comes down to your communication and the direction that you're leading your team in, and then having the understanding, the intuition when things aren't quite right, and being able to step in and troubleshoot those things, because that's an entrepreneur, right? A mix of orchestration, innovation, and troubleshooting is like your day-to-day job. So the understanding that balance and when it's off is the difference between winning and losing in today's world, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. And I think, as you said, it would be cool to have a word that, yeah, describes that. And maybe there will be one. Maybe after this
Yeah.
podcast,
Yeah.
we've just created one ourselves. So, yeah, I think that really sort of it's bridging that gap, it's balancing, it's making sure that you're choosing when it's right. And it's only going to be with the more we use AI, the more we utilize it in different ways to see what is working and what isn't, I guess. So yeah, thanks. I can't believe that has nearly been an hour. That was seems like the quickest hour ever, and I feel that we could continue to speak about it in so much more depth conversation. I think this conversation is definitely the start of something that's going to go on and develop, as we've said. And I think AI is definitely key for automating and transforming startups. But yeah, I think some keywords with intentional, the human element side, making sure that, yeah, that you're not creating more mess that's going to lead to more time with this process. And yeah, I've got some really good words out of this. And making sure, if you are a fractional leader, this impact junkie, I think, is really key to take out of it. And I think, yeah, you're building a strong culture in remote teams. You want to make sure that you're like rescuing it when you get into it, and making sure that you're utilizing all these tools in a way that's going to help only build a better team. So, yeah, I think as for founders wanting to navigate this sort of AI era and world is just make sure you're leaning in on the right people at the right time, but also use the tools when you feel like it's necessary to make that process that little bit easier and that little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Make
Yeah.
superhumans.
Exactly, that's it. Amazing. So yeah, thank you so much for this conversation. I can't believe how fast it's gone. It's been a really good insight to learn all about the key topic, which was bridging AI and human expertise in the future of work. So thank you so much for joining us, Katie, and thanks to the listeners who've been listening out there. Kate will be tagged in all of our social posts. If you've got any questions about this and further, then you can reach out to her or myself in the future. So thanks everyone for listening or watching, and see you on our next episode. Bye.
I think.